Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a real head-scratcher. It's a story about what happens when a seemingly perfect medical solution runs headfirst into our messy, imperfect human behavior. Why is it that sometimes the best choice, well, it isn't the one we actually make? Let's dig in. Okay, so picture this. A company creates a brand new treatment. We're talking solid clinical trials. It's got the stamp of approval from medical guidelines. I mean, it is demonstrably better than anything else on the market. They launch it, expecting it to be a huge hit, and nothing. Crickets. Doctors just aren't writing the prescriptions. What is going on here? And that, right there, is the big question. We're not talking about some fringe, unproven idea here. This is a clinically effective therapy. So why on earth would highly trained, super smart, data-driven experts, doctors, hesitate to use something that could actually help their patients? It doesn't make sense, right? It totally defies logic. Well, it turns out the answer has almost nothing to do with the science or the data or the clinical trials. Nope. The real barrier? It's hidden deep inside the weird, messy world of human psychology. See, this isn't an evidence problem. It's a behavior problem. So to get to the bottom of this, researchers really had to dig deeper than the obvious stuff. The first thought was pretty simple. Well, maybe the doctors just need more data, more proof. But that idea, it fell apart almost immediately. And that meant the whole investigation had to pivot. They had to ask, are we dealing with an evidence gap here? We're just showing them more charts and numbers would fix everything? Or is it a decision barrier? A psychological wall that no amount of data, no matter how convincing, can just knock down? And let me tell you, that distinction is everything. And this is where they had their big aha moment. They realized they needed to stop looking at this like a marketing problem and see it for what it really is, a choice being made under uncertainty. Think about it. Every single time a doctor writes a prescription for something new, they're balancing what they know against what they don't know. And that, my friends, is where it all gets fascinating. So, to crack this case, the researchers pulled out this brilliant framework. Honestly, you can think of it like a detective's toolkit for the human mind. It helps break down any decision to make a change into four competing forces, four psychological forces that are always pushing and pulling on us. All right, here they are. First, you've got the push. That's any reason you're unhappy with the old way of doing things. Then you've got the pull. That's the shiny new thing, the attraction of the better option. But, and this is a big but, fighting against those are two heavyweights. Anxiety, which is just plain old fear of the unknown, and habit, that powerful, almost gravitational pull to just keep doing what you've always done. So you see what's happening, right? It's a constant tug of war in our brains. On one side of the rope, you have the motivation to change. That's the push and the pull working together. But on the other side, pulling just as hard, is the resistance to change. Anxiety and habit digging their heels in. And for anything new to actually get adopted, the motivation side has to win that fight. So what happened when the researchers actually talked to these doctors and analyzed what was going on? Well, they found the culprit. And here's the shocker. It wasn't that the motivation to change was weak. Not at all. It's that the forces of resistance, they were just incredibly powerful. Now, check out how they defined a real barrier, because this is super important. It's not just, a doctor needing to see one more study. A real barrier is something that reliably, consistently stops them from changing their routine, even when the data is screaming at them that they should. And wow, this chart just lays it all out, doesn't it? Look at that. The forces for change, push and pull, they're there. They're not zero. The doctors knew the old drugs weren't perfect, and they were interested in the new one. But just look at how they're absolutely dwarfed by the towering bars for anxiety and habit. They were completely canceled out. At the end of the day, fear and friction, they won. And this quote from the study just nails it. Adoption fails not because physicians doubt efficacy, but because fear and habit outweigh data at the moment of choice. Think about that. It's not that they didn't believe the science. It's just that in that split second when they're about to write the prescription, the emotional gut punch of fear and the comfort of habit, well, it was just heavier than all the data in the world. But wait, it gets even more interesting, because fear and habit aren't just one size fits all. The researchers discovered that these big culprits, anxiety and habit, they actually manifest in totally different ways depending on what kind of doctor you are. Let's break that down. So take a look at this. For your frontline primary care doc, the resistance was all about the practical, day-to-day grind. Things like habit, the insane time pressure they're under, and real worries about whether their patients could even afford the new drug. But for the academic specialists, totally different set of anxieties. They were worried about the really long-term safety data, what their colleagues would think, and the nitty-gritty of managing complex side effects. See, same forces, but totally different flavors of fear.
Okay, so we've peeled back all these layers of the onion. What's the final verdict here? What is the single biggest lesson we can learn from all of this?
It all boils down to this. If you actually want to get people, even smart, expert people, to change, just throwing more data at them is a losing strategy. It's not enough. You have to roll up your sleeves and actively dismantle the specific fears and the very real friction that are holding them in place. You've got to tackle the anxiety and the habit head on.
And that really leaves us with one last question to think about. For ourselves, we've just seen how even the most brilliant experts can be guided more by fear and habit than by cold, hard facts. So it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? In your own life, when you find yourself resisting a choice you know is probably better, what are the invisible forces that are really pulling your strings? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.